Herd Hierarchy NFL Power Ranking heading into Week 17. Ladies and gentlemen, best time of the week, top 10 list. Before Colin's, we got to see mine though, right? This was going into last week. This is what it looked like. And now, boom, this is where we are. Baltimore has to be number one. You don't demolish a team like San Francisco on Christmas and not go number one. Buffalo 3, Miami jumps Dallas thanks to the head-to-head meeting. Great game, two good teams there. Dallas at 5, Philly at 6, Cleveland moves up 7, Detroit at 8, Kansas City continues to drop. I tried to tell you all months ago, this team cannot compete, cannot win the AFC, cannot win a Super Bowl with the wide receivers and playmakers that they have. The Chiefs seem to be crumbling. And the Rams enter the top 10 after the demolition of the New Orleans Saints on Thursday night. This is it. I think a good top 10. I think we're starting to see some, who teams truly are. And it's always interesting right before the playoffs to see which teams are hot, which teams are not hot. Right now, Cleveland, Buffalo, the Rams. A couple weeks ago, we would have said are afterthoughts. We would have said no chance, right? We would have said these teams are decent, but I mean, are they really competitors? Are they really chasing conference championships and whatnot? Right now, some of the hottest teams in the NFL. Right now, you don't want to play Buffalo. Right now, you don't want to play Joe Flacco in Cleveland. Right now, you don't want to play the Rams. So let's go ahead and get to Colin's list and see where he agrees/disagrees.
Because it's a hard league week to week to figure out. Here we go.
Herd Hierarchy.
Time is now. Let's go.
The top 10 NFL teams according to Colin. Number 10.
I think Cleveland's weird. I said this last week. And
they're not weird, brother. They're good. I mean, Cleveland's good. Joe Flacco off the couch. Funny story. I heard Joe Flacco talking about it. He said he bought the NFL ticket or whatever it is. The Sunday ticket to watch all of the games this season. He tried out to be an analyst on ESPN. They told him to pound sand. And now he's leading the Browns to an unbelievable season, really. When you factor in all their injuries, when you factor in everything that's happened. People are wondering how this happened. I made a video talking about systems, talking about how it's important to have the system that matches the player and all that. 45-minute long video, really getting into things. And Joe Flacco is a great example of that. Joe Flacco knows this system. It's a Gary Kubiak type system. It's exactly the same system he had in Baltimore. And he won a Super Bowl in Baltimore. He was very successful in Baltimore. All right. So it's not crazy that he just gets plugged into the system. He understands it. He can execute it physically. He can do what's asked of him. And look what's happening. Do I think Joe Flacco would succeed in any system? No. Do I think Joe Flacco, if you took him and put him on the Steelers, would all of a sudden the Steelers be doing what the Browns were doing? No. It's all about the system, the match, the coach, the scheme, all that stuff. Joe Flacco and the Browns, really good. Is it sustainable? I don't know. But if the playoffs started tomorrow, which they almost do, if they started tomorrow, I think Cleveland is a tough out.
And Joe Flacco took over and they're 3-1. I think it's a great story. I don't think it's a great team. But Flacco's an adult. He throws the ball down the field. And the bottom line is opposing quarterbacks this year have a passer rating of 71.6 against Cleveland. So they muddy it up and ugly it up.
Two things, what I always say. Can you throw the ball? And can you rush the passer? If you can do those two things, you got a chance. And Cleveland can do both those things right now.
It's a fun story with Flacco. I don't think they're going to do anything in the postseason with Flacco, so I'm going to keep him where I had him last week at 10.
Number 9.
Listen, Kansas City they got a problem. Okay. They're bad at wide receiver.
They do have a problem. They've had a problem. This ain't new. They're 9-6. Okay, this is no shock that they're struggling. They have nothing on the perimeter. What did I just say? Can you throw the ball and can you rush the passer? Kansas City can't throw the ball. They just lost to the Raiders, who did not complete a pass after the first quarter. All right, Patrick Mahomes threw it 45 times or whatever. I think he had 220 yards. This is not the same Chiefs team. And this goes to show you, I don't care how good. This reminds me of like the old Cavalier teams with LeBron James, where you can only be so good when you're surrounded with so bad. The Chiefs just, you can't win like this. You can't win dropping passes. You can't win getting no separation. I mean, the fact that they make Juju Smith-Schuster look like Jerry Rice, It's just not going to happen. It also goes to show you the offensive versus defense argument. Defense wins championships. Oh, yeah? Well, Patrick Mahomes has the best defense he's ever had in his career right now. The Chiefs' defense is really, really, really good. And how bad are the Chiefs? They're losing to the Raiders at home. Okay? So I think we can put that to bed. Kansas City's got a real problem. And now it looks like they're also kind of fraying in the locker room. You see Patrick Mahomes looks like Derek Carr out there screaming at everybody. Andy Reid is screaming at people. Travis Kelce seems all over the place. He's not as good as he's been before. It's got to be wearing on this team. Kansas City right now just isn't a good team. Bottom line. Do I think they make the playoffs? Do I think they win the division? Probably. But do I think they're good? No. I mean, if Denver wouldn't have screwed up and let the Patriots win on Christmas Eve, Denver would have a real shot at winning this division. Kansas City, they're just mediocre at best.
And by the way, they lead the AFC in offensive penalties. They look disorganized, and that's with Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce. They're just not good there, and they're not good at tackle. Mahomes, I don't want to hear he's not seeing the field. He sees the field fine. He's not comfortable. They're trying to duct tape some of their issues. They're averaging only 21 points a game. So, again, I think they're going to win out. I think they're going to end up 11-6 and be fine with a shot to get in the AFC Championship. But they remind me of that Cincinnati team that, by the way, got to the Super Bowl that had a horrible offensive line.
They don't remind me anything like that. That's not their problem. How can you say that? How can you say that with a straight face? Like, think about what he just said. They remind me of the Bengals team who got to the Super Bowl. You're talking about a Bengals team with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase? That's this team's problem. It's not the offensive line. It's not, hey, if we fix the offensive line, we're going to be sweet, like that Bengals team. The Bengals team was, we got to keep Joe Burrow upright and we'll be fine. And that's what they did. They figured out how to keep him upright and they were fine. Their problem is the roster. The Chiefs' problem is who is wearing Chiefs jerseys. The problem is who is lining up on the field. That's their issue, and they can't fix it now. They had a chance to fix it. They could have got DeAndre Hopkins. They could have got Odell Beckham. They could have fixed it, but they didn't. And next year, they could get Michael Thomas. They could do all kind of stuff. So the Chiefs just don't have it this year. It is what it is. They got to help. They got to give Patrick Mahomes some help.
And they got some narrow wins down the stretch and in the playoffs. I think Kansas City can do that. But right now, that wide receiving group is a mess. And the O-line isn't great. 9 for Kansas City.
Number 8.
If you'd have told me before the season I had the
Rams are good, bottom line. Rams are good. You talk about vice versa. You talk about bizarro version of the Chiefs, right? Like the Rams, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, my God. Imagine if they were on the Chiefs, right? The Rams are good. The Rams can do what we're saying you have to do. The Rams are coming on strong at the most important part of the season. Matthew Stafford is playing some of the best football he has played in a long time. You have a Hall of Fame level elite coach. You've got defensive playmakers, the Aaron Donald. The defense is young. It's not the Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald defense of the Super Bowl year, but is capable. Running back, they found one. Kyron Williams is a bell cow. He is a throwback style running back. And like I said, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, maybe the best wide receiver tandem in the NFL. So the Rams are dangerous. The Rams are a team where if they get in the playoffs, I don't want to play them. They'd have a tough road. A lot of away games. The NFC can be daunting in the playoffs. All of a sudden, you're going to Dallas, and then you got to play San Francisco, and then you got to play Philly. Like the NFC playoffs are tough. But right now, as we sit, the Rams are playing as good as anybody in the NFC.
Rams over Kansas City. Oh, wait. I told you the Rams reminded me of an older Kansas City. I said that in preseason. Stafford's an absolute heater. The O-line is healthy. Kyron Williams only trails Tyreek Hill and Christian McCaffrey in yards per game. Running the football, not turning it over. Great coach. Stafford, they got Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee. They're really playing well at tackle. Yeah. They're doing a lot of things Kansas City isn't, right? Like good at tackle, quarterbacks on a heater, not many drops, rookies delivering. They're a real team, Rams at 8.
Number 7.
These are not standings. I still have Miami about 7. Oh.
I think this is kind of unfair to Miami. Miami's good. The Cowboys game, great game. Great game between two good teams. You know, the Cowboys losing on a last-second field goal in Miami is nothing to be ashamed of. This is not that wasn't an elimination game, right? Like, they're going to be fine. Miami showed you, though, they can win a close game against a good team. You know, they showed you they have what it takes to beat the above-average teams. You know, this was an important win for Miami. This was an important win for the franchise to be able to deliver that. You know, is it the end-all, be-all? No, but for all of Miami's faults, they're still 11-4. For all of Miami's faults, they still have Tyreek Hill. For all their faults, they still have Raheem Mostert, who has 20 touchdowns. So Miami's good. They're dangerous. They really need to win the division. They don't need to go to Buffalo. Like, they don't need to be playing on the road. They need to host a playoff game. So, you know, I have a sneaky feeling the last game of the season with Miami and Buffalo is going to determine the division. They have to win that game. I think if Miami wins that game, they can make a run in the playoffs. If they lose that game, I think it'll be a quick exit for the Fins.
Oh, great. They finally beat a winning team at home. Well, they're good at home. You get that funky Miami weather and it's raining. I will say this. Without Tyron Smith at left tackle for Dallas, Bradley Chubb looked like LT. He wouldn't if they met again. Dallas would be the...
Well, it's also, I don't know if he's going to talk about it, but Miami also had a ton of injuries. You know, all 5 of their starting offensive linemen at one point were on the injury list leading up to the game. Tyreek Hill isn't at 100%. So Miami is dealing with some problems that, you know, themselves. The fact that they could shuffle the offensive line around against a dangerous Dallas front. Oh, and Miami's defense, since Jalen Ramsey has returned, Vic Fangio has them playing at an elite level. You want to hear that from a lot of people. But since Ramsey returned, the Dolphins have, if you look at DVOA metrics and some weighted analytics, they probably have the best defense in the NFL in that time period. So if you factor that in and you say, if they can get their offensive line healthy, if they can get Tyreek Hill healthy, if they can do all that stuff, oh, and they have the best defense in the NFL, that's a lot. You know, that's not what you want to. That's not something you want to play against in the playoffs.
Them on a neutral field, they beat them in Dallas, and I think it's still a team that hasn't won a playoff game in 23 years that I don't trust. I do love their coach and some offensive pieces, but I've got them at 7.
How crazy is that? Like, I'm not expecting Colin to know that. You know, they don't. Not a lot of people go as deep, just deep level thinking as we do here. But he didn't even mention that since Ramsey came back, they have the best defense in the NFL. At least one of the top 3. It's like the narrative of Miami is Mike McDaniel, Tyreek Hill, offense, right? Tua. No one talks about the defense. It's insane. Like, we're in a top 10 power ranking list. Colin, don't look at me like that. We're in a top 10 power ranking list, and we just glossed over the fact that this team over the last however many weeks has an elite defense, one of the top 3 defenses in the NFL. You could do the opposite, right? You talk about the Browns, you're going to talk about their defense. You're going to talk about Myles Garrett. You're going to talk about, you know, how they muddy things up and make it hard for other quarterbacks or whatever, because that's their narrative. This goes to show you how sometimes the public perception or the narrative of a team just isn't true. And you have to do the work. You have to do the work yourself to figure stuff out. If you're not looking at EPA and EPA allowed and DVOA and all these other metrics, and you're just relying on Stephen A. Smith or Max Kellerman or whoever to tell you the narrative of a team, you will get it wrong. You will 100% get that wrong. If someone tells you Miami is a flashy, high-flying offense with no defense, couldn't be further from the truth.
Number 6.
And I still think Dallas is better. These are not standings. Dallas didn't have their Hall of Fame left tackle, and I said that going into the game. If he doesn't play, it's not the...
Dallas is good. Dallas is good. Tough game, like I said, against Miami. No shame in losing that game on the road, last-second field goal, all that stuff. Dallas is legit. Dallas is a team, though, that they need to play at home. They struggle on the road. So play at home, get Dallas in Jerry's world. They're a dangerous team. They got to finish strong down the stretch. Oh, and they need the best version of Dak Prescott. When Dallas looked the best this season, it was when Dak was playing at an MVP level. And I said, look, I always have Dallas in like the 5, somewhere between 6 and 4, in my power rankings because of Dak. I don't think he's that good. But if he elevates his game and he's playing at an MVP, which for some of this season, he was playing at an MVP level. If he does that, this team is a Super Bowl contender. This team can win the NFC. Did Dak peak? Did we see the best version of Dak already, and now it's a downslope? Or can he play at an MVP level in the playoffs? That's going to dictate Dallas' success the rest of the season.
The same offense. Bottom line is, Dallas has 3 wins against winning teams. There was some funky officiating in this game. I don't even know what to say about that Micah Parsons penalty. That's the dumbest thing in the world. Micah Parsons is 6'2", 230, running full speed, can't make a full stop in half a second, and you penalize him. But I don't want to blame officials. Mike McCarthy promised us a more physical run team. That's not what we have. Dallas at 6.
Number 5.
I like Philadelphia. Once again, their offensive line in the fourth quarter, 3 drives.
Yeah, I think Philly will be fine. I mean, I told y'all last week, if you want to buy in on Philly, now's the time. Like, buy in on Philly while everyone else is selling their Philly stock. Philly is a super talented roster. They know how to win. This is when you want to lose, right? Like, this is when you want to have a bad stretch. They've had their bad stretch. Now they can kind of roll into the playoffs. It is imperative that they win the division. You're going to hear me say that a lot. Like, that's a huge difference, getting that divisional, I mean, if Philly wins the division, that means they're going to win, 12, 13 games. If that's the case, you're talking about home field advantage, you're talking about playing in Philly, you're talking about not having to go on the road for multiple games, possibly a bye. Those are huge, right? Like, those things right now for teams like Detroit, teams like Philly, teams like San Francisco, teams like Dallas, teams like Miami, the Ravens. Right now, it's a chase for that top seed. Right now, it's a chase for home field. Right now, it's a chase for seeding advantages. I like Philly a lot. I mean, I think they've taken some lumps here, but I trust this team in the playoffs. It is under talked about how important it is for a team to believe they can win big games, to know how to win big games, to know how to feel in the playoffs, to know how to navigate those moments. Philly can do that.
Dominated. The team's going to be fine. Last year they finished 14-3 against a bunch of yucky quarterbacks. This year they're going to finish 13-4 against much better quarterbacks. Yeah. I like them. They're not perfect. I think they're trying to figure out their way offensively, but I like their receivers, their O-line, capable running backs. Jalen Hurts is a leader, offensive coach. They're not good on the back end, and you can beat them on the back end, and everybody's beating them on the back end. But they're going to finish 13-4. I like Philadelphia at 5.
Number 4.
They won't be here next week, but I got to give Detroit credit. Here's an amazing...
Detroit, very similar to Philly, they had their worst games, probably, at the good time, right? You had your worst games to where you humbled, you aren't riding on that you think you're the best team ever. You had some stuff to work on. You worked on it, and now you can get some momentum going into the playoffs. That's good. I think that's totally fine. You would much rather have a bad stretch, and Detroit had a bad stretch with Chicago and Green Bay and the Saints and Chicago. No doubt. They had a bad stretch, and now if they can put that behind them, find who they are again, and who they are is dominate the line of scrimmage, Jahmyr Gibbs, and let Jared Goff kind of manage your game, kind of do what he does best. If you can do that, get Sam Laporte involved, get Amon-Ra St. Brown involved. If you can do that, Detroit's going to be a tough out. As long as if you dominate the line of scrimmage like they do, and you have playmakers at virtually every position, which they do, you can win games. So Detroit, as long as they continue this momentum going into the playoffs, home game in Detroit, home playoff game in Detroit, that atmosphere, I like the Lions a lot.
Amazing stat. Detroit has 4 different players with 8+ touchdowns. They nailed the draft. Jahmyr Gibbs, Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, dominating offensive line. Again, I think they lose to Dallas this upcoming week. But Jared Goff, when he doesn't turn it over, they are 7-0. They can. I love this about them. They can play with a lead without O-line. They can play from behind. Yeah. I like teams that can.
They're a very versatile team. They really are. They want to do something, run the football, dominate the line of scrimmage, blah, blah, blah. But if they have to, they can crank it up. And Goff and his playmakers can get him back into a game. Some teams don't want to do that. Some teams have real trouble playing from behind, like the San Francisco 49ers. I saw a stat where Kyle Shanahan's like 0-30 when they're losing by 8 or more points in the fourth quarter, because his offense just isn't built like that. They're not built to, have Brock Purdy or Jimmy Garoppolo in seasons past or whoever it is sit back there and sling it. If they're relying on Brock Purdy or relying on Jimmy Garoppolo to sling it, we have seen San Francisco be vulnerable and lose games. It's important that Detroit, a team like Detroit, they can say, okay, we're not winning. We're not running the ball. We can't just kill the clock. We got to throw ourselves back into it. And they can lean on Jared Goff, Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, even Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, they are a team that can do both. They can do everything. They can beat you with wide receivers, beat you with running game, beat you with tight ends. And like I said, in the playoffs, you want to be a team that can kind of be fluid with the game script. Because it's not like the regular season. You're playing the best teams in the NFL in the playoffs. So you're not always going to be winning. You're not always going to be up. You're not always going to be able to do what you want to do. You're going to have to be able to adjust in the game.
Can play multiple ways. The Lions can play trailing. They can win when they play poorly. They can win playing great. Do I worry about them on the road? Yeah, I don't think I'd take them against Philadelphia in January, but I'd take them at Tampa. I'd take them at home. I'd take them against Dallas.
They're not going to play Tampa, but they could play the Rams in Detroit. Who would you like in that game? That could be your 3-6, right? You could have Detroit hosting the Rams. Stafford revenge game. Goff revenge game. What a crazy game that would be for the first round of the playoffs. That would be insane.
I'd take him at SoFi, although they wouldn't have to play there. They'd play the Rams at home. I like the Lions at 4. I don't say it with a great deal of confidence knowing their history, but I have them at 4.
Number 3.
The Bills.
Yep.
People are not.
All right, so our 3-2-1 is going to be the same. Buffalo, San Francisco, and Baltimore. Ladies and gentlemen, I've told you for weeks, I'm all in on the Bills. Go get Super Bowl tickets on the Bills. Josh Allen, go get MVP tickets on Josh Allen. He could win this award. The Bills are playing really good right now. Love them. Love the Bills. Almost dropped one of the Chargers. That would have been devastating, but they did what they had to do. That last game of the season against Miami is going to mean so much. I mean, this team could still win the division. They could still host a playoff game. Like, Josh Allen's playing really good. Joe Brady has Josh Allen running again. He has Josh Allen playing at a, like I said, MVP level. Josh Allen could end with almost 50 total touchdowns. Insane. I love Buffalo. Love everything about them. Go get your tickets on Buffalo now.
Not paying attention. Josh Allen is the least sacked quarterback in the league. This is their best O-line. James Cook, first Bills player with 1,000 rushing yards in 5 years. For years, crazy. I've been saying they're too Josh Allen reliant. Finally, they're not, so I have to be true with them. Their O-line's playing well. Their run game's legitimate. This is the Bills team that is not completely beholden to Superman making 9 plays a game. He needs to make about 2. I like this version of Buffalo a lot. We've seen in recent years teams catch fire. The Tampa Bay team did. The Rams team did. Teams catch fire. Week 12, 13, 14, they get the O-line right. Yep. They finally get the run game right. I think the Bills are the team this year.
Number 2.
San Francisco. Listen.
Tough loss. I think San Francisco is still really good. Here's a little fun fact as well. So they put out odds if the Niners and Ravens played again. Y'all want to guess what the line would be? Go ahead and take a guess. How many of you had the Ravens as the favorite? Vegas has the Niners as a 2-point favorite against the Ravens in a rematch. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, don't do the knee-jerk reactions. It's not all about one game. Now, the Ravens looked great, right? The Ravens looked amazing. Niners looked bad. Brock Purdy, 4 interceptions, looked terrible. Was a bit of a perfect storm because of the interceptions. The Ravens had good field position. The Ravens are good playing with the lead. The Niners are bad playing from behind. The Niners still had 6 yards per play. They still had 400 yards total offense. They're not totally broken. I don't think we need to go ahead and throw away San Francisco. They got beat. Baltimore deservingly should be number 1. San Francisco deservingly should be number 2. But like I said, don't take this loss and say, oh, well, the Niners are frauds. The Niners are this. They can't win. Brock Purdy can't win this. Brock Purdy can't win that. I'd ease up on that. If anything, I would say maybe we had the Niners power rating too high. Maybe, we were saying that they're far and away the best team. They're far and away this. I think we saw where they're the most vulnerable, where they're the most weak. And that's when they have to play from behind. That's when they get out to a slow start or some turnovers happen or whatever, and in the playoffs, you're not always playing with the lead. You're playing tough teams. So that's not exactly what you want your weak point to be going into the playoffs. Great game from Baltimore, terrible game from San Francisco. I think San Francisco is still the class of the NFC, but they're not as mercurial as their power ranking was going into the Ravens game.
Brock Purdy's not good enough to overcome turnovers. I still think it's the best roster in the sport.
Yeah.
It's just that their hole, unlike the Chiefs receiver hole or maybe the Eagles secondary hole, their hole is the quarterback when he's trailing. When Brock Purdy trails in the second half, he's got a passer rating in the mid-60s. That's just who he is. I still think the roster's unbelievable.
Number 1.
Baltimore. I've been high on them all year. I had them won for about an hour. They lost a game. I think the physicality, Lamar Jackson, what cracks me up?
But Baltimore's the same, though. They need to play with the lead. They need to be running on all cylinders. If Baltimore is playing their A-plus game, they're hard to beat, sure. But we've seen Baltimore have their A-plus game, and then the next week almost lose to bad teams. We've seen it all year long. We might see it this week. Again, you can't do that in the playoffs. You can't have an A-plus game in the first week of the playoffs, and in the second week you're average. They are very yo-yo-y with how they kind of peak and the peaks and valleys they have throughout the year. Baltimore is a team that if they're front running, if they are firing, if everything's working, if they get out to a lead, if you make mistakes, they're tough to beat. They're real tough to beat. But we haven't seen sustained playoff success from this version of the Ravens. Will we see it? The Ravens are right now the number 1 team in the NFL, for sure. Am I confident that they can navigate the playoffs? No, because I haven't seen it. So they've got to show me that. Kind of the same as Dallas. I haven't seen this Dallas team have any success in the playoffs. Now, Dallas isn't as good as Baltimore, but they got to show it to me. I think Baltimore can do it. Before the season, I said Baltimore would be my dark horse Super Bowl team. If I was picking a team that's not, the favorites, who would I pick? I said Baltimore. Because I believe in Lamar Jackson. I believe in John Harbaugh. I believe in the team. But they got to show me in the playoffs. The regular season, they've showed it, right? I bet on Baltimore to win the division. Before the season. To win the North. Boom. That's going to hit. Unless Joe Flacco's me. But I like Baltimore. They just haven't reached that pinnacle yet, and we're all sitting here waiting to see if they can do it.
About Lamar Jackson. All this Tua MVP, Dak MVP, Purdy MVP. Do you think those guys would face the Niners in Santa Clara and easily be the best player and athlete on the field? Lamar's unbelievable. Physicality. They don't have their star tight end. They have a rookie receiver who had the drops. They're on their third-string running back. I think their culture, their coach, their defense, their quarterback, their toughness, Baltimore number 1.
Yeah, agreed. Baltimore should
check this out.
Baltimore should be number 1. I'm not sure what's going on here with the Ford Fiesta, but let me know in the comments, ladies and gentlemen, who's your top 10? Where did we get it right? Where did we get it wrong? Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next